Hi, I'm Ava, and I'm making a short documentary to raise awareness of animal abuse in entertainment. I myself have had a fair share of experiences while traveling around the world with wild animals in the nature and animals in entertainment. It's really those experiences that made me realize and open my eyes to what was really happening in entertainment. And I'm sure a lot of you would like to discover more about this issue. Let's dive in right into the history of animals in entertainment. The cave art that dates back to 40,000 years ago shows that human fascination with animals is as old as us humans. The ancient Sumerians were the first to domesticate animals. Later on, Babylonian and Assyrian kings started collecting wild animals as gifts. Recent excavations show that the first zoos appeared around 4,500 years ago in ancient Egypt. Egyptians kept and revered wild animals as gods and used them for sacred rituals, burials, and protection. Ancient Greeks were the first to observe and study animals for science. However, Minoans from Crete did use animals in sports games. They, for example, invented the bull leaping sport that consisted of jumps over a bull but involved no animal harming or killing. But it was really Romans who started using wild animals for entertainment and mostly in cruel ways.
The Romans invented a new class of gladiator, and they fought animals. For the animals, it was a no-win situation. They were forced to fight men, women, and each other. The Romans forced the animals to become the world's first four-legged executioners. Romans captured animals at the edge of the empire and transported them back to Rome across thousands of miles of land and sea.
It is believed that Romans killed over 1 million wild animals in their arenas. During the Middle Ages, dog and cockfighting and especially bull and bear baiting became popular. These animal blood sports continued today. At the same time, wild animal collections were rarely displayed for the public. Exotic animals were collected by royalty as a status symbol. These so-called menageries evolved into zoos and circuses in the 17th and 18th century. In the 19th century, circuses changed from mostly equestrian shows to a wider display of wild animal acts, mostly involving lion and tiger taming and training. In the United States, circuses combined traditional circus acts with animals with the additional freak shows. While circuses were already popular in Europe, the early 20th century was called the Golden Age of circus in the United States. Take a moment to depict your favorite memory of the circus. I'm sure it involves an overwhelming feeling of excitement, looking forward to each performance. The smell of fresh popcorn and the colorful sweet candy. A great deal of laughter thinking about that one funny clown, but most of all, the animals. I'm sure you haven't forgotten the amazing stunts bears, lions, monkeys, and elephants pulled, or that one fierce tiger trainer who dominated the beasts. For many of us, the circus is a dream, but not for the animals. Have you ever wondered what it takes for a bear to dance or ride a bicycle, for elephants to stand on their back legs and do figures, or for tigers and lions to jump through circles of fire while being dominated by man? How are they kept in traveling circuses and how are they transported? If the animals don't behave and perform their tricks well, they are punished in horrible ways. The trainers beat them with whips and electric prods and use tight collars and muzzles. For example, for a bear to learn how to stand on 2 feet and dance, they're caught as babies and the trainers burn their front paws so they would stand up on their back legs, or chain their necks tied to a pole and force the bear to stand for a long time. To train tigers to jump through circles of fire, their trainers use whips to scare them and hit them so they would overcome their natural fear of fire. One sad example is a tigress in a Russian circus, who not only collapsed and suffered seizures after performing this act, but she was additionally stressed by the noise from the crowd, loud music and lights, and most of all her trainers poking her and tossing water into her face. Trainers use electric prods, bullhooks, and ropes on elephants to break them when they are still young, usually only 2 years old, so they would be obedient and learn to do incredible figures that are totally unnatural to them. Due to all the abuse circus animals endure, they show signs of distress. We can notice it by, for example, head bobbing or pacing. When circus animals are transported, they are separated from their groups. They are sometimes chained for a very long period of time, deprived of food or given a minimal amount of food, and are given minimal or no veterinary care. Marine parks were created at the beginning of the 20th century, and the first park to use bottlenose dolphins for shows was Marine Studios in Florida. By the 1960s, other marine animals like orcas, sea lions, and walruses were captured and trained for the shows as well. Dolphins and orcas are kept in pools that are too small and too shallow for them to swim or dive. For example, dolphins are often kept in 10 to 15-meter long pools, while in nature they swim distances of over 50 kilometers per day. They are captured in the ocean and brought to the parks or inbred in SeaWorlds for tourist entertainment. Orcas that live in groups and families in nature are separated from their families in SeaWorlds. Their babies get taken. The water they are kept in is unhealthy for them as it contains chlorine to keep bacteria levels safe for humans. But it is damaging for dolphins and orcas because it burns their skin and eyes. The constant crowds of people and the constant effort that they have to make for tricks causes agitated and aggressive behavior. This could result in dolphins harming themselves and harming the swimmers. SeaWorld workers use a lot of medication to either calm down the marine animals or put them in a trance. It may seem like captive marine and circus animals are doomed to a lifetime of abuse, but luckily, the opposition to the use of animals in entertainment is growing stronger. Already 47 countries have banned animal circuses, and many more introduced local bans. After the documentary Blackfish, SeaWorld's harmful practices have led to public outrage and lawsuits. Stay tuned to learn more about what you can do to end animal suffering in marine parks and circuses, once and for all. Have you ever had your picture taken with a wild animal before? I have on a few occasions. I love traveling around the world and I love close encounters with wild animals. So do the other 110 million tourists who visit wildlife attractions every year. According to the World Animal Protection, more than 500,000 animals suffer every year because of the tourist demand in wildlife attractions. Already as a young child, I was lucky to experience what many would call once-in-a-lifetime experiences. From petting tiger cubs in a sanctuary in Thailand to getting kisses from a trained dolphin in Mexico. From petting lion cubs in a zoo to seeing lions in the wild on a safari in South Africa. From feeding a domesticated hippo adopted by a family who found it as a baby on the banks of Blythe River to feeding freshwater pink dolphins in Rio Negro in the Amazon. From taking care of a blind elephant in a sanctuary in Thailand to observing elephants fight in the wild. From holding a koala and feeding kangaroos in a sanctuary in Australia to observing alligators on a nature walk. From riding a camel in Kenya to seeing wild horses run free on the Native American lands in Arizona. There are some outright cruel animal attractions out there, such as cock, bull, kangaroo, and dog fighting, and some other ones that cause wild animals significant stress and a lifetime of suffering. This includes elephant and camel riding, walking with lions, tiger selfies, swimming with captive dolphins, handling stingrays and sea turtles, seeing crocodile farms and shows, taking street photos with the captive exotic animals, or paying for them to perform tricks. For humans to get up close and personal with wildlife, the animals often need to be broken, declawed, mistreated, or drugged to remain tame, poked or prodded for photos in unnatural ways. Sometimes deprived of food, they live chained and in poor conditions. I am the first one to tell you that it is not always easy to grasp upfront which wildlife encounters are ethical and genuinely help wildlife conservation and which ones are harmful to the animals. Through my own experiences, I have learned that my favorite encounters are not the ones where I could hold, touch, or feed wild animals, but the ones where I could see them in their natural habitat, displaying their natural behaviors. And I choose to never visit places that train animals for performances anymore, or use them for profit in any way. What about zoos? Are they truly places of conservation, rehabilitation, and education, as many proponents of zoos claim? If they are, is this a justification for keeping generations of wild animals in captivity? To find out, I have visited two zoos, one in Belgrade, located in Serbia, and the Zervion Zoo in Switzerland. I have interviewed two experts, a biologist and curator, Christian Ovary, in the Belgrade Zoo, and Philippe Morel, an ornithologist and owner of the Tropiquarium in Servion. Several studies showed that the general public still visits zoos for entertainment rather than education, and that most children do not come out of zoo visits having learned anything more about the animals.
The vision of the zoo, what usually we do have as an outsider, and the vision of the zoo as you have it from inside the zoo, is two different worlds. Because mainly 90% of the visitors usually come here just for their entertainment. They expect to see animals in cages, and yes, it is the old-fashioned zoo. Nowadays we have this strong zoo society within Europe and in the world also, and the European Association of Zoos and Aquaria is having this huge pressure on the zoos to change, to develop, and zoos also started to be not just entertainment facilities, but also a great learning and education facilities, because here different categories of students, elementary school, even little kids or people on the faculty, students, PhD students and so on, have the possibility to learn directly from animals and about animals. The other very important role of the zoos is the conservation role, because through the programs of obtaining animals from the wild and rehabilitating them, we have a huge success releasing them back to the wild. That means that we have a coordinated breeding process of different animal species, because it's very important to conserve the genetic material of these animals, and it means that we don't want to have some genetic branches overrepresented in the population, while some other are dying out, because we need to have the genetic diversity also of the captive population. So in some cases it's very useful, because after that the animals can be sent back to wild, and these programs are very good functioning, for instance, with the bearded vulture. We have a pair here, and they are part of the program. But also in the Austrian Alps, already some 26 specimens are released back to the wild.
Quand j'étais jeune, j'imaginais que la nature allait disparaître, en fait, il y a déjà longtemps, et c'est la résultante aujourd'hui, c'est qu'on se rend compte qu'il y a tout qui disparaît. Et puis l'idée, c'était, j'ai commencé par la grande serre tropicale des oiseaux. Donc l'idée, c'était d'avoir des espèces qui sont rares ou qui vont devenir rares, de les reproduire pour faire ces échanges anthropathologiques. Voilà, c'est ce que j'ai fait au départ. Et puis ça s'est étendu à différentes autres espèces après. Et puis le but étant de reproduire ces espèces qui disparaissent, et puis après de faire des échanges anthropathologiques pour conserver un certain cheptel. Et le jour où il n'y en aura plus, il y aura dans les parcs zoologiques, et peut-être qu'on pourra envisager d'en réintroduire. Ça se fait pour certaines espèces d'ailleurs. Et puis pour vous donner un exemple, dans la serre des oiseaux, j'ai des martins de Rothschild, c'est un oiseau qui est extrêmement rare, qui vient de l'île de Bali, c'est endémique à Bali. Il en reste environ une quinzaine sur l'île de Bali, et moi j'en ai 12 dans cette serre ici tropicale. Donc, parce qu'on les reproduit extrêmement bien. Donc, voilà, alors la protection malheureusement de beaucoup d'espèces animales, elle va passer que par les eaux. Il y aura plus que les eaux qui auront certaines espèces qui n'existeront même plus dans la nature. Et puis si un jour l'homme est raisonnable, peut-être qu'on pourra imaginer repeupler certaines régions avec certains animaux. Voilà, c'est peut-être très utopiste.
As someone who loves and takes care of animals, how do you feel about wild animals being in cages? And how do you ideally view the future of the zoo? How would the animals be kept?
Okay. For the zoos, it's very important to have the role of the curator, actually, a biologist or somebody who can understand a little bit more animals, and to make enclosures and housing and actually their everyday life in the zoo for them a better place. Zoos in the past did have these small enclosures, overcrowded spaces and so on. But we are very much aware that it's not good for the animals, and to be honest, it's also not good for the business, because if the animals are unhappy, the visitors can see that, and they are also not happy, and then you don't have the money you want to have. So in one way or in another, zoos are forced to change, which is good. In the future, I see zoos reach a much different philosophy of having animals, where it's not the display of the animal what is the most important, but the possibility for that animal to display its natural behavior. So through that, we can learn much about the animals.
How do you feel about wild animals being used for entertainment purposes, such as circuses where they actually perform?
To be honest, animal trainings are very important. But the problem is, how do you train animal and for what reason? It means that I'm very strongly against using animals for pure entertainment. So the circus acts are not good because in the circus, animals are not showing their natural behavior.
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de l'utilisation d'animaux exotiques pour gagner de l'argent, comme par exemple les photos dans la rue?
Je trouve ça inadmissible. On a une éthique au niveau du parc zoologique, c'est de vraiment essayer d'avoir des animaux dans des conditions les meilleures possibles. C'est loin d'être la nature, souvent, mais on peut essayer de faire quand même au mieux et laisser ces animaux le maximum de bien-être et surtout pas ni manipuler, ni toucher, ni caresser, ni photographier. Nous en tout cas chez moi ici, j'interdis absolument à mon personnel de sortir un animal quel qu'il soit pour que quelqu'un puisse te toucher et caresser.
What could we do as a society to stop practices such as circuses and abuse of wild animals?
Well, to be honest, if we don't want some, for instance, in the zoo, if we don't want some negative behavior with some animals, we don't encourage that. So we encourage those behaviors which are positive. And we do that by positive reinforcement, by rewarding the animal. It's the same with humans, in a human society. If we don't want something, we should not encourage it. Because don't forget that zoos and circuses and other institutions which use animals, they are using that animal just because they are empowered by the people. So it's mean, if you don't want circuses to have animals, you should not visit circuses who have animals. The other thing is you should always try to do some education, which is also very important. It's a very important role within the zoos. It's a very important role for you as somebody who is representing the youth, who wants to change the future, because the only right way of changing things for the better is through education. And people should know what are they doing, should know how to avoid negative impacts. And believe me, nobody is an evil person. Nobody will do something on purposely. If people do have the understanding of what is animal welfare and how should they conduct it, then I'm pretty much sure that as we are good with our house pets, as we are good with our friends and families, we also can learn how to interact with the wildlife around us and how to do it in a better, more civilized human way.
So what can we do as a society and as individuals? First and foremost, we have to realize that wild animals belong in the wild. Our society has normalized wild animal captivity, but there's nothing normal about ripping wild animals from their homes and condemning them to life in tanks, pools, enclosures, and cages just to entertain us. Wild animals do not exist for our amusement and entertainment. I like to believe that many people really love animals and do not want to harm them on purpose. That is why it is really important to be aware of the impact our consumer choices have on the lives of animals, both in captivity and in their natural environments. We can choose to spend our money wisely and stop buying unethical wild animal experiences, stop supporting industries that torture animals, and stop following influencers who irresponsibly promote the owning of exotic and wild animals as a measure of their social status. For all of you animal lovers out there, I encourage you to vote with your hearts and your wallets to stop animal abuse and entertainment. I strongly encourage you to stop visiting and buying tickets for circuses that feature animals. Having watched this video so far, you now know what life behind the scenes looks like for performing animals. For example, in 2017, Ringling Bros Circus closed down for good after 146 years in operation. Their extremely ruthless training practices and poor living conditions for their animals were continuously exposed by animal rights groups in the US. People like you and I started boycotting the circus and it went bankrupt. Under public pressure, the Swiss leading circus Ney phased out its elephant shows and retired their animals to an elephant park near Zurich that is open to public. Follow StopCircusSuffering.com to learn more about animal circus bans worldwide and the latest campaigns that you can support. If you, however, love the circus as an art form, you could still go and enjoy the animal-free shows, such as Cirque du Soleil or circuses featuring holographic animals like the German circus Roncalli. Instead of paying to enter aquariums, SeaWorld, and other marine parks that exploit marine animals for profit and in often cruel or stressful ways for the animals, you can visit non-for-profit marine sanctuaries that rescue marine animals. Or why not to get closer to nature by going snorkeling or by taking a boat tour? Please note that more ethical boat tours are not about chasing or manipulating marine animals in any way, but about observing them from a respectful distance. Instead of going to zoos, especially road zoos or ones that are not accredited or do not take good care of their animals, I would recommend going to sanctuaries that rescue and rehabilitate wild animals. Do your research on sanctuaries before visiting them, as some falsely claim to be places of healing and refuge. So make sure you are visiting real sanctuaries. Some organizations such as the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, PETA, or World Animal Protection provide lists to help you. And last but not least, if you have an opportunity, plan a safari vacation where you truly get to see wild animals in their natural habitat. There are unfortunately no global laws or standards governing wildlife tourist attractions, but it goes without saying that paying for exotic animal street photography or tricks, exotic animal farms and shows, animal fighting, trophy hunting, wild animal petting and riding harms the animals and encourages their owners to continue exploiting the animals in very unethical ways. Ah yes, in our modern digital times, I almost forgot to mention. Don't support but report cruel animal pranks and skip movies and television shows that feature performing live animals. That's it. All it takes is a little bit of education, awareness, and an open heart from us humans to be kind to animals. Thanks for watching, and please cast your vote to stop animal abuse in entertainment.